3.5 years into the console's life cycle, and you finally have a proper controller buyer's guide. During my ownership of the 9th generation home consoles, I've tested and reviewed the titty nips out of a slew of controllers for the PS5. Some of them are based on the DualSense, the stock controller, disassembled from there by custom controller companies like AIM, Scuf, Beaver, HYPR, Cinch, Modz, and others. So those are going to communicate with the console just like a stock controller, so you can wake the console and all the DualSense features that you're used to, like haptic feedback and adaptive triggers. Then there's the third-party, real deep third-party controllers that start as their own unique shape and shell design, use their own PCB or printed circuit board. We're talking about things like the Nacon Revolution 5. But one thing I do want to get right out of the way, front-loaded if you will, is going to be pricing, because it is substantially different on the PlayStation side of the house than it is for Switch and Xbox. I feel weird wearing this hat. When the controller lords have blessed you with a noggin full of hair like this, a sweet mop, you don't usually cover it with a cap or a lid. Considering this is going to be one of the highest viewed videos on my channel, it would behoove me to do my hair just like it would behoove you to watch the video in its entirety. That's not because I'm trying to grab you by the udders and milk you for the view minutes or anything like that, but rather we're talking about your hard-earned shekels, your caps, your ducats. And speaking of caps or moolah, I have organized my best Xbox controller video in 3 distinct price points, and that's the same thing I'm going to do with the best Nintendo Switch controller video, where you have the entry level or budget pads, which are $70 and below. Why $70? Because that's what Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo are charging for a stock controller, a replacement gamepad, if you will. Then $70 to $180 is that mid-level price point, which is my favorite because you tend to get the best price to performance, bang for buck controllers where manufacturers are really shoving in the most features without bending you over a barrel and taking you to Pound Town. Unfortunately, on the PlayStation side of the house,
I know I like to keep it light, keep it fun. I won't take it to a serious tune.
there is no entry or mid-level segment. It starts at that $180 flagship or premium level price point, which is completely different than the PS4 console, which I reviewed several controllers from last generation that were $40, $50 generic, nameless, gameless, brandless, faceless pads on Amazon. Some of them were actually really sick. They paired right up with the console, worked seamlessly, wirelessly, but that is not the case on the PS5 side of the house. Now, what is a beneficial or good thing is the fact that from the PS4, which used Bluetooth 4.0, there was an upgrade or enhancement. As you would expect, technologies get better over time. The PS5, which came out 7 years after the PS4, has Bluetooth 5.1. That's how it communicates with its controllers, and that's great for peak speeds, consistency, not getting interference with other things in your room, being able to connect multiple devices, pair that same DualSense controller to a phone or tablet, and then seamlessly pair back to your PS5, things like that. What's not great is that it is a very strict, locked down protocol that doesn't allow hardly any third-party controllers to be paired to the console, unlike the Xbox side of the house, which, yes, there was that major Xbox unauthorized controller ban, which I covered the news of. That'll be linked in the description below. I know this is a PlayStation buyer's guide, but maybe you're curious about that. There's a lot of misconception about that, a ton of misconception about that. The fact is, the PlayStation is truly restricted like people think in their noggins the Xbox is. So the custom controllers that you're going to get for a PlayStation 5 that don't look like a stalker are going to be the ones that start as a stock DualSense and then are customized from there, or they're a third-party controller company like Razer that has a partnership, a contract with Sony, so they can get that blue branding on the box and be a licensed authorized Sony accessory. And keep in mind, Sony's not using a restrictive wireless protocol like Xbox Wireless. It's Bluetooth 5.1, but Sony chooses to keep it restrictive, obviously for making money, so they can charge these third-party controller manufacturers like Thrustmaster and PDP and Razer a little kickback or VIG to get the branding so they can actually connect with the consoles. So all of this to say, this was all for a reason. I know I blew a lot of hot air up your tuchus, but it's all to say that controllers start at about $180 for the PS5, and all of them are wireless. I can't think of any wired-only pads for the PS5, which is very different than the Switch and Xbox, which have wired-only controllers. Another pre-word before I actually jump into talking about the actual controllers, before you meet the faces, the freaks backstage, if you will. I do want to mention that that I am going to skim over or briefly cover some of the PC specific features of these controllers, like do they have ReWAS support and can you overclock them? But the primary focus of this video is the actual physical components and then things like the warranty, customer support, QC reputation, things like that are going to apply more to people that pick this up for the console side of the house. But after I've completed this best PlayStation controller video and then the best Nintendo Switch controller video, then I'll have all three of the consoles covered because I've already done the Xbox one. That was the first joint to pop off. Then I can do a fourth and final, which is going to be the best PC controller. So that's everything, every controller I've tested, because pretty much everything works on PC. Without further ado, let's start talking about controllers for the PlayStation 5. Enough input delay. This video is slapping. Starting in no particular order with AIM, I guess if we were going in alphabetical order, this would also be the first company we look at. We know that they make PlayStation 5 controllers. They also make console covers or plates, panels, if you will, for the PS5, although I reviewed those and they're pretty subpar. You have a couple of options over here. The PS5 Flood Collection is going to be these glow-in-the-dark joints. You do have 3 different designs. They're all $244, and they do come with the 3 staples. So you got your trigger locks, remappable back buttons, and then your swappable thumbstick caps. I was sent out one of the glow-in-the-dark units prototype beta joint when this first came out. They're pretty cool, very similar to any glow-in-the-dark thing. The effect only works for about 20-30 minutes after direct light exposure, and it's kind of gimmicky, but keep in mind you do have the snap plates, so you can just pop off the glow-in-the-dark ones and put on a regular set. And that's one feature I really do like of AIM is the snap plates, so you can change the look of your custom controller without having to buy another $300 Pro controller. But one thing that threw me for a little bit of a loop is the fact that it says active triggers here, but then it shows the aim back Pro. It's different. The aim back Pro is their on-off trigger lock system, and active means that they're constantly digital triggers. So I would confirm that with AIM because fuck, that's a huge difference there. And AIM's warranty, I'm going to get it right out of the way now because we're going to be talking about some of their other controllers, such as what you can spec out in a builder. So it is the only custom controller company that I know that offers a lifetime warranty, and that does cover a lot of parts or components, including the paint. So if your palm is wearing off the paint job, the hydro dipping graphics, you can get that replaced. The controller buttons, that's huge because if you get the digital buttons, those do have a tap life cycle and should be a lot more durable for you. But if you get the membrane bad boys, the stalkers, and those get jammed in for you and you don't really want to take apart your controller and fix it, which I advise you don't, and AIM also does advise you don't, you can get that fixed here. Smart triggers, so those are the clicky digital mouse-like click triggers. Love them and recommend them. Bumpers to match, those are both replaced. The paddles are going to be the plastic swappable pieces in case you snap one of those bad boys. The bases are going to be the spider kit in the back where you remap everything. Now the actual controller motherboard, so I guess the stock controller's PCB, the printed circuit board, and then stick drift, so the modules themselves, are only covered for 45 days, which I don't like. Because with these other controller companies that offer a really short warranty, like 6 months, super short, that covers everything. So if you get stick drift, that's covered for 6 months. As we're here, that's only covered for a month and a half, which is very, very short. Lifetime on all these other parts and components, but a month and a half for stick drift. Keep in mind, if you go the Hall effect route, probably not going to get stick drift. Then you've got your pre-designed PS5 controllers, so a couple of pre-built ready-to-ship Johns, which fluctuate substantially in price, $140 to $240. That's because some of these just have cosmetic upgrades, and some of them are pimped out to the nines. These shortcuts will jump you down to these little tear lines, but you can also just scroll down manually. We'll click on this one because it's good, clean family fun. You got your basic bitch special over here, and if you flip it around on backside, there's nothing that's going to make you happy back there other than maybe this graphic, but no paddles. No. Why the hell get a Pro controller if you're not going to have remappable rear buttons or back paddles? That's the main staple of a Pro controller. But when we click this little I'm a professional box, we do notice we're missing something. Those aim back triggers, which I personally wouldn't get an AIM controller without aim back triggers or the rubber grips. You heard it here. 2 must-have features from AIM. The reason being the aim back triggers are the best trigger system period that I've tested for the PS5. And without the rubber grips, the plastic is incredibly slick because they don't have the licensing for those PlayStation faced buttons, which is the stippling or grip. So it's a really slippery palm grip if you don't go with the rubber grips, which luckily are phenomenal. But those are 2 things that you just got to go for in the builder, and you're not going to be able to get those by getting a pre-built controller. Also keep in mind there's no way to select Hall effect thumbsticks here, and since it's not a builder, you are very limited or restricted as to what you can get. It's just a pre-built. Now coming over here to the builder, cosmetically this is a cool looking website. Click on customize now, you're going to get a little pop-up. It's going to let you know know, the 3 standard features, then it's going to go away after a couple seconds. I did mention previously I wish you could just manually close that pop-up, but it just turns itself off. Now these do start at $180, but keep in mind you're also going to have tax and shipping, which we're going to talk about all that for all of these companies, but you're also missing those rubber grips, which I do not recommend getting an aim controller without, but you are getting the aim back triggers, 4 remappable rear buttons, which are also removable, so if you just want to rock 2 or none for a specific game, you can do that. So to get this where I would deem it respectable and ready to run, where them grips be at? Now the aim builder is actually very easy to navigate because not only do you have this vertical bar, but you can also click on the clipboard over here and then jump to directly what you want. Bam, aim grips, $26 option. That's reasonable. 3 different colors here. So 206 bones. Keep in mind I also have an exclusive discount for aim and most of these companies, which will knock this down substantially. So right there, this is a performance only build from aim, 206. When it comes to customization in the builder, options, being able to select multiple colors of D-pad, triggers, stuff like that, I would list aim near the top as they do have a lot of faceplate options. However, I do want to make note of the fact that they removed their option for metal D-pad and face buttons, which I have on my original V1 aim spider back, and I think those look really cool, but you don't have that option anymore. Now it is pretty surprising that each one of these components is pretty reasonably priced because aim is one of the more expensive companies when it comes to the most expensive flagship controller you can spec out if you slather every option on the builder. Funky that each individual part isn't super expensive, but if you add everything, it does add up to one of the most expensive controllers. A couple of options I would advise speccing on an aim controller, and a few I would advise passing on to be the most cost effective. Obviously, cosmetic stuff you can pass on unless you really care about the looks of your controller. These digital buttons, which are a $40 upgrade for both the D-pad and face buttons, absolutely get it. I recommend it 100%. Hall effect sticks, there are cheaper companies per module, and also aim only gives the option for both modules instead of being able to get one potentiometer and one Hall effect, which you have that option with other builders. Now this is a $50 option that does add 30 days to the build time. Rubber grips you absolutely need to spec with an aim controller, so you go from one of the slickest rear shells to one of the best for $26. Smart bumpers I absolutely recommend passing on. This is the easiest feature to recommend passing on because it's $34 and bumpers are already about a 1mm squeeze and aren't a big point of failure. Pass on that. The gamer tag and logo are these stick-on decals, which are actually raised. You're going to feel it on your palm, and also the coloration doesn't really match the rest of the faceplate, so I'd advise skipping that. And also the LED RGB thumbstick option. I don't even see that in the builder anymore, but if they do still offer it, absolutely pass on it because you can't dim or disable it, and they're actually not even coordinated, so the left stick will be a different color than the right. It looks super tacky and whack. So this is how I personally would spec out an aim controller, looking stock but performing like a beast. $311. Keep in mind I do have an exclusive discount in the description below, which will knock that total down to math right here. Next up is going to be Cinch Gaming, who has this silly pop-up. Get out of my face. You've got your 24-hour builds over here, which are going to be your pre-builts. You've got these for Xbox and okay, Xbox alone. Now, if you click on shop, it is basically going to break out these 2 tabs where you have customize, that's their builder, PS4 and 5, and Xbox controllers, and then you got your 24-hour ships, which are pre-builts, Xbox only. Now the stick drift fix over here, because I get a lot of questions about this, it is a PCB that you can solder on the back, and this isn't exclusive to Cinch. This little stick drift fix has been available for almost 2 years from PCBWay.com. I think Vkuda made a video on it around the time it was introduced, and it's absolutely not what you're thinking of. It's actually almost identical to the Hex Phantom I reviewed recently, where once you have a potentiometer thumbstick module start to go out on you, you can recenter it, but you're still gonna have issues with your outer dead zone and tension. You're really just tautening up the dead zone to where you don't have drift anymore. I think this is really stupid, to be perfectly blunt. Hopping in their builder, they have rush build speed, which a lot of these companies do let you pony up a little bit more dough for expedited shipping, but it's still a long ass build time and you're paying additional money for basically nothing. Speaking of wait times, custom builds are 6 to 8 weeks, which is long. However, that's about what I waited for my Evil, 3 months for my Battle Beaver, about almost 2 months for my Scuf pre-order of the Reflex, although that's a pre-order, so that's different because it wasn't even out yet, but you get my point. Let's click on PS5 over here. And hovering over this little guy, what does this do? What is the point of this? It just changes the color's looks. So standard build time is 6 to 8 business weeks, or you can put a rush on that for 1 to 3 weeks build time.
Put a rush on that.
which is free for a limited time. And then in this drop down, you have builder's choice, which means the man or woman assembling your controller is going to use their best judgment to pick a part or component that matches as good as possible with whatever's out of stock. So this builder is kind of clunky and not as easy to navigate as something like AIM, which has that little pop-up. It lets you directly jump to each part or component. Here, you just have to scroll manually for a long time to get down to each part. Also, extremely limited on the customization here, as the faceplates are all solid colors or gradients, except for this Galaxy, which you can purchase this on Amazon for about $15 and install yourself. Very common faceplate. I will say their chin piece is pretty cheap. AIM is charging 15 bones for this little piece, and it's only $6 over here at Cinch. Also, their starting price of controllers is way lower than it was when I originally tested that Cinch controller from about 2 years ago, when I pointed out that at the time they were about 30% more expensive than the competitors when it comes to pre-builts, and then also speccing out a custom in their builder. Things have changed and they have reduced their prices. Few options for the face buttons, $10 for those, $4 for a D-pad, a couple of clear options as well. No options for Hall Effect thumbstick modules, but you do have interchangeable height sticks for $20. I think that's kind of weird. That should be a standard feature on a Pro controller. Also, this kit is about $15 on Amazon. It is from ExtremeRate, and I have installed this exact kit on multiple controllers. They are interchangeable and they do feel very grippy, very nice. They call the rear shell back casing, and you can get an anti-sweat texture, which does feel very nice. They do offer laser engraving for $10, and since I haven't personally taken this option, I can't speak to the quality if it looks like AIM's, but the fact it does say laser engraving makes me think that they're actually cutting or etching into the faceplate, which would be really cool. But here's where the price jumps up substantially, and that is if you want 2 or 4 rear buttons. We of course want 4, but here's my biggest complaint with Cinch Gaming and why I personally don't recommend their DualSense controllers, and that is the rear button layout, as they are way too close together. Even if you're an individual that prefers 4 rear button coverage with just 2 fingers, where your middle fingers can cover 2 of the rear buttons, the tips for the bottom 2, and the meat, the little bony ball, for the top. That works if you have a controller like what I spec'd out from Beaver, but with Cinch, they are so close that you actually get false actuations. Press both buttons together when you're not trying to. And I even have skinny fingers. I can only imagine if you had some sausage fingers. But I will say their pricing is a lot better, because this exact build was like $350 when I tested it. But what hasn't changed is this rear button layout, and because of that, in combination with pretty minuscule customization and at least 6 weeks of build time if you don't put a rush on that. Keep in mind, these are static buttons. You have to choose in the builder what you want them bound to, unless you want to pop 24 extra bones for a remap chip, which of course you should have a remap chip. That should be a standard staple expected feature to be able to remap or bind your buttons. And they do have an option for both the triggers and bumpers for $42 to make them a mechanical mouse click. I'd like if it was separated by the bumpers or triggers for cost effectiveness, because we only really care about the triggers here. And they do also have instant mouse click digital buttons for $22. That's going to be the D-pad and face buttons. I do believe $22 to be very reasonable, considering it's a $40 option from AIM, but I haven't tested these exact mechanical buttons, so I can't speak on the actuation force or anything like that. Now, they do offer a sticked drift kit over here, and you might be thinking, cool, magnetic Hall Effect thumbstick modules, like what HYPR and AIM are offering, but no, it's actually the stick drift correction flex board, which I covered a minute ago, is for potentiometer thumbstick modules to recalibrate them when you begin to get drift to get you closer to neutral, but you're still having other issues, such as your outer dead zone. You can't really do anything for that. You need to literally resolder new modules on. What the fuck is this? TikTok video review for $15. I do believe what this is getting at is that they'll take $15 off if you do a TikTok review. They're trying to get not free marketing, but getting their customers to do little commercials or little hype, you know, hey, check out the Cinch controller. I've never liked campaigns like that. I just find them sleazy and stinky, and the fact that they chose TikTok as their platform for that stinkage makes perfect sense. Let's move on from it. A pro USB-C cable, not an amateur USB-C cable. This one's taking college courses and it is professional. Should be, because it's $10 for a 1mm.
Uzi 9mm.
Oh my god. And then we get into the nail in the coffin as to why I don't recommend Cinch controllers, and that is the fact you have the shortest in the game in this segment, custom PS5 controllers, 30 days, slapped to the chin of its customers, or you can extend it to what is still offensively short for $35. Next up, we have Carbxn controllers, who I personally have not tested yet. This might be one of the only companies I haven't actually gotten my nitty-gritty mitts on yet, and I will. But all the information I'm going to cover is based on the company's claims from their website, and then personal experiences that I've read from Reddit, my Discord, comment section of YouTube reviews, and just word of mouth on the internet. Now, for the longest time, I've said that AIM is the only custom controller company that offers a limited lifetime warranty on their controllers, but appears as if that's a goddamn lie because it looks like Carbxn does this as well. Let's read the fine print. So the warranty is actually for a periodic time frame of 1 year. However, there are some parts and components that are covered for the lifetime. And here's the catch-all. Any parts that were belonging to the stock Sony controller, the headphone jack, the actual printed circuit board, the battery, things that aren't Carbxn branded could shit out on you, and that is not covered by the lifetime warranty. But what is any modded components that are installed by Carbxn, so things like the paddles and the clicky buttons and the hydro-dipped faceplates. If the controller is older than a year, you will need to cover shipping costs, which is really common with these controller companies, and that's both way, back and forth. So and then it also says cosmetic wear and tear is expected and will not cover under your warranty. So that's different than AIM, because they say the graphics on the faceplate wearing off, things like that are covered, but here not so much. And here's a bit of a catch-all that the warranty is voided if it's determined that negligent or improper care of the controller caused the issue, which I guess they could deem anything. So these are their pre-builts ready to run. If you click on shop and then click on PlayStation over here, you got the Combat and Clash pre-builts. They also do have a builder over here in Customize, which we'll look at in just a second. Clash is their 2 rear button, and I actually do really want to get my hands on this because this is a different rear button design than anything else I've tested, so that alone gets me excited in the gamer nether regions. But these look very similar to the ExtremeRate kits that you can buy on Amazon and install yourself, or if you get a Hex pre-assembled DualSense, there's a model called the Rival that's their 2 rear button that looks pretty much identical to this and probably shares a lot of the same parts. Now, once you click on these pre-builts, it kind of takes you to a little customization option, so kind of a mini builder to tweak your pre-built. So you got that lifetime warranty, which is pretty limited. You do have free shipping, that's awesome. 1 to 2 day build time, that's fast. And then local support, so an English-speaking chat service. So with this drop down, it actually selects some predetermined options. So the FPS Duo adds $44. You got the 2 remappable rear buttons. That's awesome that they are going to be remappable. You don't have to pony up extra dough for a remap chip. You have micro triggers and bumpers, so clicky bits up top, and then interchangeable thumbsticks. You can also change out the controller face, which is going to be a $7 option, or $11 for these 3 premium options. And you do have Hall effect options, which can be separated from the left and right module, or both for $44, which is quite cost effective. And you can also do increased tension on Hall effect modules. It doesn't tell you how many grams stronger than a stock stick that is, but you've got standard and higher tension, which you can apply to individual or both thumbsticks. Keep in mind, if you want to be able to remap clicking down the left and right sticks to the rear buttons, you need to click this option because they need to solder an extra little bit on the board. FPS Quad, it didn't change the picture, but it's already this one down here. This is the 2 rear button, identical to the Hex Rival, and this is the 4 rear button, identical to the Hex Ultimate that I tested and said I really didn't like. And instead of listing 4 rear buttons, they just say 4 paddles and 4 buttons, which is true because these 2 are paddles and these inner 2 are buttons. A very funky, weird, not great rear button design. And then their top of the line is the FPS Sweat, which I think is a pretty funny name for it. The Sweat Lord Deluxe over here, which has everything as the previous versions, except you've got the rumble force and adaptive triggers removed, so I do not advise taking this option if you're going to be playing PS5 games with this controller. But if you're on the PC only, or you're just playing competitive shooters where you don't give a damn about things like that, go ahead and remove them. And this is going to go for $310, free shipping, and that somewhat limited lifetime warranty. Over here in the builder, which is interesting because it's not separated by PS5 and Xbox, it's all one big party over here. As for your faceplate options, you got these clear joints, which are $26. That's pretty expensive. You got these unique ones, which are hydro-dipped graphics, and they say unique, but a lot of these aren't specific to this company. You can buy these from ExtremeRate or Hex. And this graphic is on the Beaver builder. A lot of these custom controller companies share a lot of designs. Front shell over here is going to be things like carbon fiber and wood grain. Face button options are between $3.36 to $10.76, and then you've got your remappable rear buttons over here. Does come with a remap chip, thank God. $60 for 2 of them, $70 for 4. And if you want to go buttons, which do look pretty slick, it's 33 bones for 2 of them. But keep in mind, those are static, and you have to choose what you want in the builder. Some very interesting thumbstick options that I haven't seen in other builders, like these little dotted stippled boys. And then you have a couple of options for rubber grips. These do not feel good. They're the same ones used by Hex, the ExtremeRate kits, Carbxn, a couple other companies. These are not comfortable whatsoever, but they do last in the long run. They're durable, but just don't feel great. These have a little bit of both. They should last you in the long run, but they also feel really good, grippy on your hands. So I would recommend popping for these bad boys. They're also cheaper too, which is interesting. Carbxn also has them Hall effect thumbstick modules, as we saw in the pre-built customizer, not the actual full-fledged builder, but you can also get higher tension. Fully pimped out, you're looking at $293.27. And just like Battle Beaver, Carbxn also offers a send-in service where you can send in a stock controller as a candidate, and that will remove some of the build cost. Although I never really advise taking this option because you're out of controller, and it's always best just to get a brand new Pro controller delivered and then keep that stock factory joint as a backup, in my personal opinion. Their website cosmetically isn't on par with a lot of the competitors. You can see it's like low resolution pictures and whatnot. Also, their builder isn't very cleanly laid out or easy to navigate, and the website just looks a little bit meh, but their controllers seem to be pretty decent, and I will be checking out Carbxn in the near future. Then we've got a new contender over here called Modz Controllers, or Bcau.com, who sells parts or components, but also Pro controllers as well. We're going to click on this quick Pro build over here because we're all discovering this together as a team. I've never actually dicked with Modz controllers before. Controller? PlayStation. Mouse click? Yes. Okay, radical. So these rear buttons are rated for 20 million. These bad boys are 20 million clickaroonies. These have a tap life cycle of 10. I want to go for the 20s over here. I want 4 of them on the Ascent. Oh, you got to be fucking kidding me. That makes it not a recommend right there. These are not remappable. These are going to be static buttons that you have to pick in the builder, and there is no option for a remap chip. Let's go to the DualSense builder. Maybe that's where the real sugar is. Now, we are very limited on cosmetics over here, as these are all the stock Sony faceplates, and then these are disassembled from Modz controllers and customized from there. Back buttons, 4 of them. Mathematically makes sense because there's 4 face buttons that I would like remapped. Add a remap chip. Yes. Now, I don't like that it doesn't show you how much the option is. You have to do the math yourself, which is difficult for somebody like myself. $17 option for a remap chip, not bad. Definitely recommend that. And then you got the Pro sticks over here, which they don't show a picture of, but they don't appear to be swappable, rather just changing to the Xbox style. So if you prefer the concave thumbstick caps of a stock Xbox controller versus the hybrids that PlayStation 4 and 5 controllers rock, then you can select them here. And you do have an option for Hall effect thumbstick modules on both the left and right, and you can go increased tension. Again, doesn't show you how many grams of increased strength that is, and there is no decreased or lesser strength option. And these are $20 per module. That's if you don't go increased tension. If you do, add an extra $10 per module for the increased tension. Now for the face buttons, they have Omron mouse click faces, which include individual D-pad and grippy Pro buttons. That is a $38 option. This builder is kind of trash. Like whenever you choose a mod for the back, it doesn't automatically flip to the picture of the back. And when you're making these changes, it's not changing the look of the controller. It's very just generic little builder here. It's so interesting that they're selling these parts because you can get these cheaper from the manufacturer, from PlayStation Direct or from Amazon when they are in stock. These are in and out of stock pretty frequently. Oh, there we go. Okay, now I've cracked the Da Vinci code. I was like, what are they doing here? It's a Hall effect Genful unit. Now it looks like the increased and decreased tension are just the potentiometer stockers, but if you want Hall effect, you don't have the option for increased or decreased for these DualSense Edge thumbstick modules. So upon examining what Modz has to offer, I wouldn't spend my hard-earned caps on a gamepad or controller from them. They don't offer anything that other companies don't offer, and they are savagely limited as far as customization, and it definitely looks like a much smaller company, so they probably have a lot less customer support. I'm not going to say the website looks, like, hey, this isn't a reputable website or anything, because I've actually heard a few people recommend, hey, check out Modz Controllers. They're doing some cool stuff. I found what they were talking about with the grippy face buttons and D-pad. They actually have stippling grip texture. I don't think I would like that at all. I will be getting my hands on Bcau Modz over here, or Modz Controllers, but in the meantime, I can't really recommend them, just seeing what they have to offer pricing wise. I have really enjoyed my Evil DualSense controller. In fact, this is one of the ones that I use the most. Now, there's some interesting shit going on here. Is they had the Master mod, which when I tested Evil, they did not offer a mod chip or modded controllers similar to Mega Mods or Modded Zone. So these don't have Pro controller features like swappable thumbstick caps or remappable rear buttons, but they do have remap chips on board. So think of it like a Cronus Zen or, you know, a mod chip where you can hold down a button and have it spammed repeatedly like a turbo function. I shared my thoughts recently on modded controllers and Cronus Zens and things of the sort. I'm not a big fan myself, but I will test and review them if there are companies out there that offer the feature like Evil over here. But we're going to focus on their actual esports shift, which is crazy because you see this picture of a DualShock controller, and I was thinking, wow, that'd be really cool if it was a PS4 shaped controller that worked seamlessly on PS5. That's not the case though. You come down here, they look like this, or what I spec'd out from Evil about 2 years ago. Two things I really like about Evil is going to be their included thumbstick cap options. They're a lot better than what's offered from its competitors. Also the carrying case, which is additional caps, but it is very nice and does give you a place to hold those included thumbstick caps. And I really do like the rear button options because you can either go with buttons or these very unique paddles. So as for the pre-mades over here, which start at $124, but I don't believe those will have any remappable rear giblets. I'm wrong. Wow, that's actually very reasonable. $106 for a 2 rear button controller. How much is this, John? Not bad. So $131. That doesn't include a remap chip. That's an extra $25. So that's so disappointing. And also they have removed pretty much all of their awesome thumbstick cap options that I was just raving about. So now you're down to domed or convexed over here, and then concaved, or those little half pipe dish joints, and you do have different heights. And then you have your master mod. That is that mod chip. I'm going to leave that off because I don't use that. And all these controllers do come with 1 year of warranty coverage, but you can enhance that with their silver and gold package. So you don't have any thumbstick or bumper coverage with the standard warranty. You're just SOL in that 12-month period. But if you do purchase a silver or gold warranty, that will cover additional components like bumpers, stick drift on the thumbsticks. And with the gold tier, you have 50% trade-in value on your old Evil controller, and you can pay as low as $75 for a new joint, one-time trade-in only, and you get priority support. So a couple of things to sweeten the deal, I guess. And that's $42 for silver, $76 for gold. So with a non-mod chip controller with their best warranty, currently on sale for $233. That's pretty gosh darned reasonable. Keep in mind, this is just one of their pre-builts though. Let's get in the builder, see what we can do. So their builder is kind of like AIM, where it's very easy to navigate because you can scroll this away, but you also have a little hotkey bar up here where you can jump to the specific components you want. Pretty expensive for solid colors at $30. You do have some gradients as well, some metallic options, and then you have your graphics, your hydro dip joints, which are $40, so very expensive for graphics. But I will say these ones are all exclusive to Evil, as I haven't seen these designs anywhere else in any other companies. You got this trim piece for $10. You do also have a clear option, which looks kind of cool. All of these cosmetic options are pretty reasonable pricing wise. Let's just go ahead and slather everything on there. No rubber grip option here. And then one huge con with Evil is that if you want to go with rear buttons, which of course you want your Pro controller to have rear buttons, that's like the main expected feature, it has to remove the haptic feedback, so no vibration whatsoever. That's great for saving weight, a little bit of battery life, but if you want to use this on your PS5 and you want to feel the cool haptics, you're not going to. And this is the only custom controller company I can think of that it's mandatory to remove the rumble force motors if you want rear buttons. That's about $50 because it's $25 for the 4 buttons, but keep in mind remapping is it's got to be here. That's an extra $25. And unfortunately, you don't have that really cool other paddle design if you don't want to go with buttons. That's only on the PS4 DualShock controller, which, you know, come on. No options for Hall effect thumbsticks yet, but it seems like a lot of custom controller companies are hopping on board with that. You can get tactile triggers separated from the bumpers, which I like because I just skip picking the bumpers usually, but that's $33 for the whole setup there. It'd be great if it was an on-off trigger lock system like we see with the controllers on screen here, the Aimback Pro, the DualSense Edge, and the Hex Phantom, because you can use those for full trigger squeezage, playing a racing game, but then you click them on when you need that mouse-like click. And they do have increased thumbstick tension, which you can do on individual sticks or for both for $42. And it doesn't list in grams or PSI how much more strength it is, but it is 2.5 or 2.5 times stronger than stock thumbsticks. And you can pay to remove the rumble force motors, but keep in mind if you have rear buttons, those are coming out anyway, but you can pay a little extra to have the adaptive trigger motors removed as well. Extra $6.70 for a USB-C cable, bringing this to a $317 controller. That is on sale currently. Usually this would be a $373 $100 controller. On the Battle Beaver website, and it looks like some of the graphics are blacked out or not loading for me. That's totally fine. We got the quick picks over here, which are going to be the pre-built joints. We're looking for the PS5 DualSense. You've got your basic Beavers over here, which have 2 remappable rear buttons. Then you got your Pros, which is a little bit confusing because the features listed are identical, coming down here to their top of the line. Smart Beaver, which takes an estimated month of build time, between $240 to $265. And these are pre-assembled. You can see you have a couple of faceplate or color options over here, black or white face buttons, but pretty limited as far as customization. That's pretty fucking absurd, actually, as $250 for a controller with no rear buttons. But we want to explore the builder. Battle Beaver has long time been lauded on the channel as having pretty much the most performance or customization options. On the Xbox side of the house, you can have up to 6 rear buttons and select exactly what position you want those drilled into the rear shell. PS5, you don't have that option, but they do have a shitload of other things in their builder. So you got your pre-designs that you can start with as a template, but we want to customize our own from the titty nips up. So we're starting here on page 1 of 25 and we're building our Beaver. Their builder is also very easy to navigate because you have shortcuts up here, and then you also have this little progress bar at the top. You can go with up to 4 rear buttons. You can go with the standards or with Beaver tails, which have this little bit of stippling or texture. I kind of wish I would have popped for those on my Battle Beaver, although I really do like the layout that I went with. And one of the most beautiful things with Battle Beaver is you can select the exact positioning for these rear buttons. That's way too close together, almost like Cinch. That looks crazy. Super weird. So you can get 3 over here and 1 button over here. If that's the case, why can't we just build a 6 rear button DualSense? You can go white or black for the caps. Also, like in the builder, this is a 3D DualSense. You can drag and drop around, zoom it in with the scroll wheel. Probably the best looking builder, hands down. And the individual prices for these options are listed, but not right next to the part. You have to scroll down here to your total and you'll see, okay, yeah, it was $30 to add that remap chip. Another piece of customization that only Battle Beaver has is 2 different switch types for the rear buttons. You have the standards and the softies, which are about half the volume, easier button presses, and it says it's great for quiet rooms and streamers, picking up all those clicks for their audience. Battle Beaver also has the most customization when it comes to thumbstick tension, as you have light, decreased, increased, and heavy. And clicking on each one of those, it does give you a estimation as to, is that a real word? An estimate as to how much stronger, more resistance these sticks are going to take. Also, another piece of customization here is that you can choose each individual bumper or trigger. So if you want an analog over here and a digital over here and vice versa, you can choose that. Oh, never mind. They kind of tease you a little bit, but then it comes over here and there is a confrontation with the previous mod. Stock cannot be selected with smart bumpers, so it'd be cool if you could actually do what I just said you could. That's kind of a downside because Battle Beaver does not have a trigger lock or stop system like AIM, the DualSense Edge, or the Hex Phantom, so you're always going to have those digital mouse clicks. Just keep that in mind. You do also have separate selection of the D-pad and face buttons being mechanical or membrane. Holy shit, that's expensive, but that is $40 each, as where it's $40 for the set from AIM. You can remove the rumbles, pretty common, but you can also remove the built-in microphone, which I hardly ever see that option. And as far as your face plates, you have black and white factory Sonys, then you have these solid colors. These are soft touch, feel real nice on the fingertips. These are also soft touch, kind of a rubberized material. Then you have hydro dip. These are going to be slick plastic on the hands. Crystal, which is actually smoked. You can see the internals or guts a little bit. And then special is going to be unique to Battle Beaver, so some exclusive graphics you won't see anywhere else. Pretty much the same graphics or options. A little bit of trim right there. And I can't see that changing the price anywhere down here, so this is not a great way of seeing the price actually change per option. Also, you're limited. You can't get a different graphic on the touchpad. If you choose the faceplate, it's going to match. As where other companies, you can get a separate graphic on the touchpad. And here you do have a lot of thumbstick cap options as well. You have the standard PS5s, the Xbox concave, some domes, some interchangeables, which is the option that I recommend, and then Pro Sticks, which are on the Battle Beaver DualSense that I've reviewed on the channel. They're okay, but I personally wouldn't buy them again. And you can also choose the color of the bases. These ones are clear, so you can see the module getting drift on you in there. Oh boy, and Battle Beaver hitting us in the sack with one of the shortest warranties as well. Coincidentally, also one of the most expensive controllers, as we're at $400, and that's not even all the cosmetic options. There's a few other things I can slather on here. Now, if you do want a proper, somewhat respectable 1-year warranty, that's an extra $50, bringing this to a $444 Magnum over here. Although, something to note, even with that 90-day warranty, drift is covered, as where remember, However, with the bronze package, the rusted out metallic package, the standard missionary warranty from Evil did not even cover drift. AIM covers drift for 45 days, which is short. And then you've got some options for USB-C cables over here. Oh, and a freebie. They'll throw in a little sticker so you can sticker bomb the ass end or took us to your car. Oh, good. I'm not surprised. Build time is currently delayed up to 8 to 10 weeks, and that's probably a very conservative little estimate, so people still pull the trigger on a purchase, and then you'll get an email about that 8-week mark, the ass end of it saying, hey, we're actually getting ready to start building your controller, order number 2694, but we did want to let you know that a lot of the options you selected in the builder are no longer in stock, so could you choose some replacements for us? Just speaking a little bit on my personal experience with Battle Beaver, that I got zero communication from the company for 3 months, other than to let me know via a generic little email that the triggers I selected in the builder were now out of stock. And you can have your controller shipped in a sturdy, unbranded cardboard box, or if you want a protective carrying case you can put your loose accessories in, that is $9. Pretty reasonable. And you can also add a nameplate, which I'm assuming is for the protective case, not the controller itself, because it's in this section. And you can also leave a message to the builder saying something like, hey, thanks for building my controller, do a good job, or whatever. So pretty damn expensive. Over $400 for a just about pimped out to the maxes Battle Beav. Modded Zone, who I was about to give you a full tour of, has an important update over here. We are ceasing operations and liquidating the company following a combination of challenging economic factors and declining sales since 2013. This was an extremely difficult decision, and we've reached after many months of careful evaluation. So before I continue on here, I'm just not going to, because I have reviewed 3 Mega Mod controllers, an Xbox, PS4, and PS5 controller from Modded Zone. They were decent, but they were definitely taking a focus on modded controllers, mod chips, which if you're looking for that, Evil and Modded Zone are still in business, and that is what they specialize in. Well, Evil doesn't specialize in modded controllers like Modded Zone. It's just something that they offer in their builder. But facts are, it looks like Mega Modz is going to be closing their doors, and that makes me even more thankful that I have my hands on 3 of their controllers, because those will be a little bit more rare because they're now discontinued. But as a customer, you're not really missing out, because there's better places to look for a PS5 controller. Now, I just mentioned Modded Zone. They specialize in modded controllers, so if that is what you are looking for, a controller with a mod chip, then I would check them out, although they are freakishly expensive. If you want to get one pimped out to the max, it's about $460. And keep in mind, I really do hate the way they do mod delivery through a phone app. It's seamless to turn them on and off, but the fact that you can purchase individual mods for like $3-5 through the app and then flash them on your controller, it just seems so sleazy, scummy, which it already does using a modded controller, but then you add this whole hoopla with the app and it just, yeah. But just focusing on the actual controller itself, I will say things like the D-pad and face buttons didn't really blow me away, but let's look at what they have to offer. So for PS5, you've got the Ready to Goes, the Signature, the Pro Edition, and the DualSense Edge. Clicking on the Edge, they are going to be just that, customized edges. That one looks wild. The Pros are Pro controllers, so they have the clicky triggers and the remappable rear buttons, rubber grips, but they also have a mod chip, and these start at $200. Then over here in Signatures, these can be just cosmetic mods or a mod chip, but generally not really loaded up with the full mod pack, just a couple of mods for a specific game like Fortnite or COD. And keep in mind, that's something you can do with the MZ Titan OS app, is add mods that you want down the road. Dude, navigating this kind of sucks. There we go. Same thing with the Ready to Goes. These are an even more stripped down, but quicker to expedite and ship out. 2-day shipping option, but you have a 3-month warranty or a year for $20, a year of specialized coverage for $70, and you can add your mod packs here. But let's build a Pro controller, so not even focusing on the mod chip at all. We're going to leave it off completely. You do have a couple of shells here. You got your premium hydro dip joints, which again, a lot of these graphics you see on ExtremeRate, Amazon. Signatures over here. Some of these are exclusive and I haven't seen them anywhere else, but a lot of these you'll find floating around other builders. Pretty reasonable price though. 25 is the most expensive they get, 15 for these mid-level Johns. And you do also have quite a bit of options for the back shell and the face trim, or that little chin piece. And the little complaint I had in Battle Beaver that you could not select a different graphic for the touchpad if you chose a different graphic for the faceplate. That is not an issue here, as you can mix and match. As for thumbsticks, these are all going to be constantly installed. Again, steer clear of these LED RGB joints. Same exact kit that AIM uses. Terrible. I would recommend these interchangeable joints. Save you some money on KontrolFreeks. Come with 3 different heights. Premium buttons, this is just going to be cosmetic. You got the bullet buttons, but they're still membrane, not mechanical switches. If you want that, you can select it for the D-pad right here. $7 gives you a split D-pad, which is going to be 4 individual switches, so not one rubber membrane plunger mechanism under there. If you're a fighter player, play a la fighting games, I would recommend popping for that option, especially because it's only $7. Now, all these rear inputs are remappable. They're not even going to show you static buttons, which I really do like. It's 70 for 2, 90 for 4. And if you want to go buttons, not paddles, which I personally would advise, it's 80 for 2 and 90 for 4. And their layout is very, very similar to Evil's, almost identical, as I mentioned during the comprehensive review for this controller, which is a good thing because I personally love Evil's rear layout. You can select just digital triggers for that mouse click, 30 bucks, 45 if you want to get the bumpers involved, but keep in mind that's an easy way to save money by not including that. They also have a very interesting option to disable R3 click, so if you're somebody that accidentally clicks R3 in melees when you're in the middle of a gunfight, you can disable that, but why the hell would you want to do that? Custom picture, which is currently 50% off if you want a picture of your Nana on there so you can see grandma smiling down on you when you're raining on the lobbies, and you just upload it from your PC. You can also do pictures on the left and right of the palm grips and add your gamer tag. And as far as accessories, they've got some silly shit over here. The Hipshot dot aim device, which I talked about during the initial review, stupid. And then their equivalent of precision rings from Scuf, which I have a review of on the channel. Assembly time regular, that's about 5 to 7 business days. That's the assembly time. Keep in mind, it's also got to get shipped out to you, which we'll talk about in just a second. Or you can do same day assembly, which within 24 hours, your controller will get assembled. That is pretty impressive. Warranty, another shorty over here, 3 months for a stock joint. $20 gets you 1 year of warranty coverage, which I absolutely believe should be standard. Does not cover damage caused by accidents, abuse, neglect, so they deem it wear and tear at their discretion. $70 for the gold package, which covers everything except for accidents and misuse, which again is up to the company's discretion. So $450 for a controller that is meant to have a mod chip but doesn't. I would honestly only look at Modded Zone if you are trying to build a modded controller. If you just want a custom controller, I would look at any of the other custom controller companies such as Hex, AIM, and Battle Beaver, because price to performance, bang for buck, it just ain't here. The GetaGrip Ocho, which I just reviewed, is a cool controller. It's the first version or first introduction from this controller company, and it's a little bit overpriced for what it is currently, although I will say it does have magnetic Hall effect thumbstick modules and does look really cool. But the fact of the matter is their rear button design, it just isn't comfortable. It is the only 8 extra input PS5 controller on the market, which is really cool because you feel like RoboCop, but they can't be remapped and rewazed, so you can't bind Windows specific functions like Alt or Spacebar to those rear buttons, making it pretty limited what you can do with them. And I feel like there's more setbacks to comfort with this design, but I would keep an eye out because I do believe GetaGrip Gaming will be introducing some pretty sweet second versions of this controller. Hex Gaming is no stranger to the channel. In fact, they've been lauded, praised as some of the best custom controllers on the market, as I've been using ExtremeRate parts for about 8 or 9 years, and the company's been in business for over 15 years creating custom parts that you can buy on Amazon and install on controllers yourself. Then they made a sister company, an offshoot called Hex Gaming, assembles a controller and ships it out with a somewhat decent warranty. But fact of the matter is, price to performance, bang for buck, Hex just has it down because they don't charge for cosmetics, which is the only custom controller company that does that. They have a pre-assembled 2 and 4 rear button option, the Rival and Ultimate, or you can spec one out in the builder. Not to mention, it ain't even listed here because it's not even officially out yet. It's a Kickstarter campaign. The Phantom, which I just reviewed, is the newest, latest and greatest PS5 controller. Now, to be 110% honest with you, I would not purchase another Rival or Ultimate controller, as I was not a huge fan of the rear button designs, but the Phantom, which begins delivery in June, is a phenomenal PS5 DualSense controller. Having said that, if you are not offended by the rear button designs of the Ultimate or the Rival, they are very cost effective at $200, which, keep in mind, it says it's a sale, but they are always this perma sale of $200. And that's also on Amazon. Many of these graphics or designs are sold on Amazon with Prime 2-day shipping directly from Hex. It's not some weird third-party vendor or something. But again, after having extensively used the Rival and Ultimate, because I've had both those controllers for a long time, not a fan of either, but the Phantom, supremely worth a check out. I'm not going to rant and rave about it too much here, but all you really need to know, it has the 3rd best trigger locker stop system for the PS5, behind that only of the DualSense Edge and Aim Back V3, and has one of the best rear button systems if you like to be able to cover all 4 of the rear buttons with just your 2 middle fingers. You have 6 onboard profiles, 8 swappable thumbstick caps, all this in a package that should be around $200 at launch, although keep in mind it's a Kickstarter campaign right now and this is subject to change. The next thing I want to touch on, because we just talked about Hex, is purchasing ExtremeRate parts, then doing a teardown or disassembly on a stock DualSense controller, a candidate controller if you will, customizing it yourself. Now that's a great option if you have a little bit of DIY knowledge. There is a couple of cons to that method method. The first one being you have zero warranty at that point because you've disassembled the stock controller, so warranty's out the window. The next one is it does require a little bit of DIY knowledge because you're taking your controller apart and you can break some stuff in there. The Nacon Revolution 5 Pro is one of the few controllers on the list that doesn't start life as a stock DualSense controller. It's its own thing, its own shell, its own PCB or printed circuit board, and it has some cons, shortcomings, limitations. There is no haptic feedback, no adaptive triggers, and since you're using a dongle, it can't wake up the console, and I feel like a lot of the features could have been ditched, such as the weights that you can pop in the palms, and that build cost allocated towards better parts and components, because all in all, everything felt pretty lackluster for the requested $200. This is an absolute non-recommend for me. The DualSense Edge, which I purchased from PlayStation Direct, actually pre-ordered it and had it delivered on launch day, review out a few days after that. I also made a comparison with the Elite Series 2, Microsoft's first-party Pro controller, and all in all, this is one of my favorite PS5 Pro controllers. It is one of my most common grab and goes, but the only problems here is, first of all, you have 2 remappable buttons, not 4, although I will say they are really unique. You've got the lever backs and the half domes. Lever backs feel like normal paddles. I don't really use them, but the half domes, which stay installed on mine constantly, are freaking awesome. Rubber grips also feel phenomenal as they are tiny PlayStation logos or face buttons. Cool little Easter egg in there. And then you have a trigger lock or stop system, which still uses the adaptive triggers and has 3 stages of stoppage, although the middle does fucking nothing. And cosmetically, this has got to be one of the slickest looking controllers, and the biggest feature here is the fact you can remove the thumbstick modules if you do get stick drift, and replacement modules are very reasonably priced at $20 on Amazon and PlayStation Direct, although they're in and out of stock frequently. Me personally, I haven't gotten any drift on the Edge since I purchased it, and I play with that controller a lot, and I think the thing I like the most is how it integrates directly with the PS5, where you can switch profiles while you're in game. It's pretty slick. As for the Beloader Besavior, I honestly would only recommend this controller if you're going to use it for the feature of the fact it has a Beloader adapter built on board, which is pretty much the only adapter other than a Cronus Zen, which is a nefarious piece of shit, that allows you to use pretty much any controller on PS5 to actually play PS5 games. A lot of converters or adapters let you play PS4 games and navigate the console, but you get that little error message whenever you go to play a PS5 exclusive. Now, the Beloader Besavior actually lets you Bluetooth or wire tether through and use Xbox controllers, PS4 controllers, all kinds of shit. So that alone is pretty cool. But having said that, you don't have clicky face buttons or D-pad. You just got the stock triggers, and a lot of the components aren't great, including the rear buttons. There's better options out there, but it's a nice little 1-2 punch to have an adapter and controller in a $150 option. Keep in mind, this is the sale price, but every time I check, it's always on this $160 sale. You can get this in a $70 kit in either black and white to match your black and white stock controller, or $160 for the assembled joint, which I think is pretty goddamn reasonable because it comes with a carrying case and some slipover caps, which don't cost them much, but it's just nice to have. And you have a couple of OTG cables as well. As for the controller people, I did test out their basically DualSense Edge clone with click sticks that look like a couple of massive nipples on the back. This is an interesting controller, but having gotten a lot of stick time with it, I will say it feels identical to the DualSense Edge, but a little bit less comfortable. Also, the website looks a little bit not nefarious or anything, but not like Beaver or Scuf, where you feel very confident that this is a reputable company. Also, you're gonna have to do a little conversion here if you're in North America, because this squiggly line isn't the currency that we use. Oh my god. And the fact they are selling the controller hanger that you hang your controller from the thumbstick caps that I bashed in that silly little worst controller accessories video recently. But in all seriousness, to not waste your time, there's no real reason to look at that controller. As for the Victrix BFG by PDP, this one should be an absolute recommend, but it's kind of not. It doesn't use magnetic Hall effect thumbstick modules, and it has these swappable modules, but that really is only to change the layout from symmetrical PlayStation sticks to offset Xbox sticks, and also to install the fight pad, which I think is a cool option for fighter players. But PDP has expressed since the launch of this controller that they were going to have replacement modules available if you get stick drift. Those are still not readily available, despite PDP making an official post that that is going to happen. There are some third-party joints you can get out there. I would wait for PDP's official option. So that's always been kind of a weird thing, that you have a modular controller like the DualSense Edge, but you don't have replacement parts for it. Having said that, it is a really sick controller. You don't have the haptic feedback vibration or the adaptive triggers, but you do have the clutch trigger system, which if you're playing on PC and don't care about adaptive triggers, it is one of the best trigger lock systems, as you can get a very, very short pull, and they're technically 5-stage because you squeeze them to where you want and then you engage them, so very customizable. Ergonomically, this This is also a very comfortable controller. The rear button design is good, but not great. Cosmetically, I think it looks pretty slick. And the pricing for a wireless controller, not bad, but you are missing out on some of those PS5 centric features, and it has taken way too long for official modular parts to be available. And the build quality does feel substantially cheaper than almost any of its competitors, but if you're just holding your controller and not dropping it, that shouldn't be a huge deal. Now as for our favorite X-Men, the Wolverine V2 Pro, if there's a PlayStation 5 controller I can absolutely maximum not recommend, it's going to be this bad boy here. As all of the key features can be had in a $130 wired Xbox variant, the only feature that you're getting here is the fact that it works wirelessly on the PS5 via a dongle, which has respectable speeds, but that in no way warrants the $250 price tag considering their ergonomics are atrocious. It's not a very comfortable controller. The rear button design is completely clumsy, and there's so many gripes and complaints I had with this controller during my initial review that just reminiscing on it makes me solidify my statement that I would never ever recommend this controller. HYPR's been a real roller coaster of emotions on this channel. I reviewed my first model about 2 years ago, really enjoyed it. However, I kept my ears to the streets and heard so many customer complaints. These are customers that spent their hard-earned money purchasing two $300 controllers, some of them with Hall Effect thumbstick modules, and there was a big quality control problem where a big batch of controllers were coming wonky, broken out of the box, and on top of that, there was also some issues with refunds, as on HYPR's end, they changed vendors for payments, and I'm not going to get into it all here because if you're interested about the logistics of how stinky it is over there right now, there is a video linked in the description below, but I will caveat all that by saying I do believe all of the stinkage that's happening over there in the HYPR factory is just temporary. The owner Cameron did explain a way forward, their game plan, but none of that's really been implemented, and because of that, it's very difficult for me to recommend HYPR controllers because I have witnessed so many horror stories, more so than any other custom controller company. You hear these from all of the custom controller companies. There isn't a custom controller company I can think of where I haven't heard at least a handful of complaints saying, Kevin, I picked up one of them gamepads you said you liked in the review. Goddamn bumper was broken on me. If I find out where you live, watch yourself, bud. Stuff like that. You hear it from AIM, Scuf, Battle Beaver, definitely HYPR. That's the main one. But in the PS5 side of the house, they do have the Signature, which is going to be their pre-built, the sub $200 powerhouse, so they're going for bang for buck entry level over here. And with these pre-built models, you have a couple of options in these drop downs, two different positions of 4 rear buttons. You have 4 lowest and 4 low. 4 low is if you want to cover and use all 4 of the buttons with just your middle fingers, and 4 low, which is what I rock on my matcha green HYPR, gives you a button underneath your ring fingers and middle fingers. And for only $10 more, $200 out the door, you can get both Hall Effect thumbstick modules and 4 remappable rear buttons. On paper, that sounds fucking sick, right? Unbeatable. But again, the overall consensus is just that the customer experience over there is so stinky right now. But I'm keeping an eye peeled, and when I see the tides shift, the winds of change roll in, then I can let my audience know, hey, HYPR actually is implementing those changes that they set forth. And now the delivery time with these pre-builts is actually really short. It's showing if you place the order today that you would get this the 26th to 29th, which is only about 3 weeks. And more on that down here with the lead time drop down. Please note this is a pre-configured controller that's made to order. So these are pre-assembled on the shelf, ready to go. Typical orders are built within 10 to 15 days and shipped out the following day. And you do have 1 year of warranty coverage with these HYPRs. As for their builder, starting at $120 for what is at its core a stock DualSense controller, you do have quite a few options for rear input. You have 2 rear buttons, 4 rear buttons, coverage with just the middle fingers, 4 rear buttons, coverage with the middle and ring fingers, and then the Flex Pro paddles, which I have also reviewed and compared to the buttons. And my final verdict was they're not that great. I would stick to the buttons. Extra $25 for the remap chip. You can change the color of the rear buttons, which I thought was kind of cool. It is $40 for both the bumpers and triggers to be mechanical. Would like if that was separated for cost-cutting measures, and also if there was a trigger lock or stop system with a lever back there. They do have Hall Effect thumbstick modules, which are insanely competitively priced, $13 per module, and you can get them on just the left or right. Now, they are shipping much better quality modules. The first batch had a nasty jitter at neutral where it would be stuttering and sputtering all over the place, and the average error in the circularity test was pretty goddamn high. And keep in mind, the modules sourced were not supposed to be the square ones, so the average error shouldn't be that high. And then this causes a little bit of confusion, as this is a new option that was just recently introduced, and this is the auto calibration boards, which if you are going to get Hall Effect thumbstick modules from HYPR, do not unless you get this auto calibrating board for $15, as this will will eliminate that jitter. Keep in mind, if you do want to go firmware calibrated, they are better now on average. 6 to 9 average error rate and a resting value or neutral of 0.00392. That's from the manufacturer's claims. One really cool thing is if you do go Hall effect, you do still have the option to go lighter or stronger with the tension. That's 20% less or 70% more for $15, both of those options. And that is separated by the left and right thumbstick. One aspect where HYPR is extremely limited is going to be in the cosmetic or appearance tweaks, as they only have 6 graphics or hydro dipped face plates and a handful of solid colors. As for thumbstick cap options, you have the hybrids of the PS5. You've got the pros, which are similar to concaves of Xbox, but with a little bit shittier grip in my opinion. You've got the interchangeables, which are what I would pop for because, well, you have 3 swappable options. And then you have the domed of the DualSense Edge, which I love on the Edge, but I'm not paying extra for them here. Also a note, they called their anti-friction rings glide rings. So if you're looking for those, since they call their face buttons action buttons. Pretty reasonable there, $3 for these cosmetic options. Okay, $6.50 for D-pads. And you can choose a separate color for the bumpers and triggers. Only thing that would be cooler than that is if you could do each individual one, lime green on this one, orange on this top boy, but having those separated is really cool. Considering AIM doesn't even offer colored bumpers, it's all black. You do have the option of rubber grips for $18. These do not feel the best, however, they should last you in the long run as they're aimed a little bit more towards long-term durability than overall comfort. You do have an option to remove the rumble force motors for $10, which is an extra $10 if you want to leave them on with HE sticks. Am I reading that right? And then as for a warranty, you do have 1 year of coverage that includes stick drift and 7-day replacement. Now, standardized shipping is going to be 6 to 9 weeks, or for $25, you can get express build, which should be out of the factory and in transit to you within 7 to 10 days. But as you can see, this isn't a cheap controller at $348. And with the customer support where it is currently, I'd proceed with a little bit of caution. Over here in Corsair's controller company Scuf, we're going to be looking at controllers specifically for the PS5 platform, which we already know is going to be the Reflex family, that being the missionary position, the Pro, and the first-person shooter. Changes being listed here. I own myself a Reflex. I chose that model because, well, one, when I pre-ordered, that was the only one left in stock, and that's also why I went with orange, because that was the only color left in stock. And the reason I went with the Reflex is because it still has the adaptive triggers, and since I do use that controller frequently to play PS5 games, scratch that, flip it and reverse it, I actually have the Pro because I have the rubberized grips, which feel pretty damn good. So I personally recommend the Pro if you're going to be using this to play PS5 games, but if you're just playing on PC or just shooters where you don't need the trigs, then go ahead and pop for the FPS, which is an additional $30, but does get you mechanical clicky triggers and removes the vibration motors. So again, taking away those DualSense specific features. You do also have some pretty cool looking face plates, although I will say the standard gray also looks nice. The nitty gritty is this: the quality control got whipped into shape when Corsair acquired Scuf. You hear a lot less horror stories, and the warranty also doubled in length. I will say the rear buttons take a little bit of getting used to, and it's kind of hard to press simultaneous button presses on the same side because you basically wedge your middle fingers in this little half pipe section, but it is a much better design than Scuf was using on the PS4 era, not only from a durability standpoint, but also actuating. They just feel a lot more ergonomic and smooth. You do have multiple swappable profiles, and those paddles are removable. I don't think I mentioned that during my initial review because I didn't know, but you just pinch them and pull and you can remove those paddles. Rubber grips feel phenomenal. This controller looks sick. It's been plugging away with no issues. I absolutely do recommend the Reflex Pro from Scuf. Next up, a stock DualSense controller. That's right, Kevin, what's wrong with the OEM controller that came with my console? Absolutely nothing, and I have a comparison of stock Xbox versus stock PlayStation controllers, going over everything from D-pads, face buttons, input lag or delay on PC, warranty, durability, blibbity blibbity. Stock DualSense is pretty goddamn good. There's also other controllers I've tested, like the IFU GTP, that can be used on PS5 with converters or adapters, but I really want to focus on native controllers that are labeled and branded as PlayStation licensed Sony controllers in this video. But if there's a controller for the PS5 platform that you feel like should have been in this comparison, there's a very good chance that I just forgot, as I am one man with one brain cell, really. So if there is a company or model that I did forget, drop it in the comment section below, and what I will do is a same thing I did in the Xbox controller comparison, as there were 3 or 4 controllers that I thought of later that I had tested and reviewed but weren't in that comparison. I do a long pinned comment explaining where that controller fits in with all of its competitors. So basically the same words I would have told you via the video, but you get my written thoughts via a pinned comment. So I know I didn't give you a definitive set in stone, this is the best PS5 controller, because that doesn't exist, because everyone's requirements are going to be different. But what I did do is lay out pretty much everything everything you would want to know about all the controller companies available for the PlayStation 5 platform, the ones that I personally tested, and also 2 that I haven't yet, but I will. But now that you're armed and loaded with this information, this knowledge, you can make a better decision for yourself. Although I will say some really good recommendations that have treated me real sweet have been the DualSense Edge, which is no surprise because that is Sony's first party offering, probably the most popular pro controller for the PS5 currently, as it is sold in brick and mortar stores like Walmart and Best Buy, and it is a great controller. I will say it'd be great if it had 2 more rear buttons and far better battery life, as that is absolute Achilles heel of that controller, as it does have worse battery life than a stock DualSense controller because it has a physically smaller battery. The Scuf Reflex Pro is also phenomenal, and the Hex Phantom, which isn't out yet as it is currently in pre-order phase. It is a Kickstarter campaign, but that's the latest and greatest model from Hex. I would skip over the Rival and Advanced as I just wasn't a fan of the overall package, but the Phantom is a different story, as I think it's one of the best PS5 controllers on the market, and if they do stick close to their goal price of $180 out the door, it'll be about $200 probably. That's a really solid option as well. One of the best options overall that I've been recommending for like 3 years now, one of the first pro controllers I tested for the PS5, and it's continued to not disappoint as they have continually made changes with new versions or iterations, adding a lot of new features like the snap plates, but aim has always been an easy recommendation, especially now that for $180 you can get a DualSense controller with the aim back trigger lock system, 4 remappable and removable rear paddles, which aren't the best rear inputs in comparison to a lot of the others we talked about. They're not great, but the overall package with aim has always been really sweet on the palate, and that ain't changed. Drop in the comments section below what you're using to play on PS5, and of course, if I missed any controllers that should have been part of this comparison, make sure you check the description before you pull the trigger on purchasing any of these custom controllers, as I do have exclusive discounts for the majority of these companies. The ones I don't, I will in the near future, and I will see you Stallions and Stallionettes tomorrow. Peace. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers, so this information will reach and assist them as well. Much like the back of the TV, I've got plugs for all of my socials down there in the description below. And your wallet will greatly thank you if you check the description, because there are exclusive discounts on a ton of products, including controllers, KontrolFreeks, keyboards, mouse pads, clothes, and energy drinks. And keep in mind that you, the viewer, keep this channel running. The more Stallions and Stallionettes trotting around the stable, the better, so mollywop that subscribe button like it owes you money, and we'll have the same amount of fun tomorrow.